You know I couldn't use Reuters as my fact-checking source, so I went to the source, the 2015 article that looked at death rates from SIDS or just deaths in children in general. So it says deaths reported to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, United States, 1997 to 2013. And then this was originally published in the Clinical Infectious Disease Journal in May 2015. And it says, vaccines are safe, It says that VAERS received 2,149 death reports in that 1997 to 2013 date range. And the median age of death was 0.5 years old, and males accounted for 57% of the reports. The total annual number of death reports generally decreased during the latter part of the study period. So in the beginning, like 1997, beginning, but around 2013, it started kind of petering out. Most common causes of death among 1,244 child reports with available death certificates and autopsy reports was sudden infant death syndrome. There were 544, or about 44% of deaths in children under the age of 18, so 0 to 17, was from SIDS, then followed by asphyxia, which is strangulation, basically, suffocation, 6%. Septicemia, that's an infection in the blood, that's about 5%, and then pneumonia was about 5% as well. So the most common was sudden infant death syndrome in kiddos. It does go into adults, but I'm not as interested in adults. And then it says for child death reports, 79.4% received more than one vaccine on the same day. Not the same day as death, just the same day as another vaccine. And so the question is, what's the correlation, if any, between the timing of the vaccines and the deaths of these kiddos, especially the SIDS kiddos? So, of course, it looked at all of this information. It goes through the VAERS data. That's where it pulls this information. So the results, they identified 2,149 death reports in VAERS, like I said. Most reports involved children 0 to 17 years of age, and like I said, majority were males. And the median onset interval is where I'm interested. The period from vaccination to death, the median period from vaccination to death was 3 days for all ages, 2 days for infants less than 1, and 5 days for children 1 to 17. So that means that infants under 1, their average death occurred within 2 days of the vaccine. And if they were older children, it happened within 5 days of the vaccine. And then it does go into adults. In adults, it says that if they died, it was within 3 days of the vaccine. Among the 1,469 reports in children 0 to 17 years old, 79.4% of those received more than one vaccine on any given day, right? Among infants, 86% received more than one vaccine. And that makes sense. Infants are the ones who generally get the combination products, right? They get the DTaP, which is the diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis. That right there is 3 in 1, right? They get hepatitis B, they get H influenza, right? They get a lot when they're under 1 year old. So it makes sense that 86% of the SIDS cases or death cases happen to get more than one vaccine at any given time. So if you look into this a little bit more, it says that 544 of the 1,244 deaths were SIDS deaths. So that was the sudden infant death syndrome. And again, like I said, if they were under the age of 1, it was within 2 days. So what makes me sick about this is in the end, it says there was no correlation between vaccines and death. However, they're showing us that it occurred within 2 days. Like, if there was no correlation, wouldn't it be like 90 days, 30 days? 2 days to me is like a big question. It said SIDS occurs rarely during the first month of life, but it peaks between 2 to 3 months of age, which is when we start vaccinating, right? We do newborn, we do 2 months. right? So if SIDS doesn't happen between the 0 to 2 months, it's probably because we're not really vaccinating our kids at that point. But at the 2 to 3 months of age, that's when we start getting people in for their 2-month checkups. And sometimes we delay it a little bit. We want them to be at least 2 months old. And that's when they get their vaccines. And it says, because SIDS peaks at a time when children are receiving many recommended vaccinations, it would not be unexpected to observe a coincidental close temporal relationship between vaccination and SIDS. So they are admitting that there is a coincidental close temporal relationship between vaccines and SIDS, yet at the end it says that there's no causal association. But they're admitting that there is a temporal relationship, and they're just ignoring the fact that it could be the cause of SIDS in these people. SIDS deaths in the United States have been declining since the 1990s for a variety of factors that obviously include sleeping positions, environment, being able to figure out what actually caused the death versus, maybe 50 years ago we didn't have the technology to figure out the cause of death. But just because it's reducing doesn't mean it's fully gone. In fact, 46% of childhood deaths in this VAERS system was reported in that 16-year period, and they were within 2 days of a vaccine. So there, I did my homework. I looked at the exact study that Reuters article was looking at, and yes, it did say that 11% of deaths were within the first day of getting that vaccine. So 11% of deaths happened within the first 24 hours of a vaccine, but on average it happened within 2 days of a vaccine for babies, right? For infants, for sudden infant death syndrome. So all I'm saying is we really need to look into this further. That's the whole point of VAERS. The whole point is to figure out red flags so we can study it and pull things if we need to. We need to get rid of vaccines if we need to, or we need to alter vaccines if we need to, or regimens, or maybe timing of vaccines. That's the whole point. And to ignore the data that's literally in front of our faces is not the right thing to do. It's not good for our babies, and it's not good for our moms and dads who are concerned. So that's the overview of this clinical infectious disease article in 2015. If you want to look into it, it's called Deaths Reported to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, United States, 1997 to 2013. And it was written by Pedro Moro, Jorge Arana, Maria Cano, Paige Lewis, and Tom Shimabukuro. So look into it yourself. See what you think.